use all the same salt water, all the same, a lot of the same kind of system for the most part, but each tank is so unique and kind of comes with its own thing.
Welcome. This episode we are here with Leah, aka Cali Coral Collector on Instagram, and we are really happy to chat with her this week.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
The goal of Women in Reefing is to celebrate and acknowledge the successes of women from every area of the hobby and industry. In each featured video, we get to know a different woman's story. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube so you never miss an episode. Let's jump right into hearing Leah's story.
So let's start at the beginning. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into reef keeping.
I had very small freshwater tanks as a kid, I think probably as a lot of us did, just kind of scattered here and there throughout my childhood, but had never attempted saltwater before. Actually in elementary school, I had a teacher who kept a saltwater kind of Fowler fish only tank in the classroom. And during recess, she would do water changes and I would watch her balance, salinity and do temperature checks and all of that. And thought that's a lot of work. And then randomly we started going to pet stores. My significant other was like, I think we should do a saltwater fish tank, sort of out of the blue, out of nowhere. And I went, I've seen what that looks like. That's a lot of work. Long story short, we ended up with a Black Friday, just Petco 60-gallon tank, ended up doing a hang on the back overflow, some custom plumbing to a very simple sump. And as much as I thought I was gonna maybe be hands off, I was present and addicted from day one. And now have 4 different reef tanks that are running and everything that goes into it. So I'm full-blown multiple tank syndrome addicted at this point.
It happens to us all. How long did it take you from first tank to 4 tanks?
It's been 3.5 years.
Did your next 3 tanks look that way, or walk us through?
No, ended up going very different and decided that I needed a bigger tank. So actually the one behind me is the WATERBOX 130.4. I love WATERBOX aquariums. I actually have 3 of them. I have the 20, yes, I know Patty's in the same boat. I have the 20 cube, that is my anemone tank. And then I also just set up the 25-gallon mini peninsula, which is my tiny venomous fish and soft coral tank. And then the 4th tank is the Fluval Evo 13.5. And that's sort of just like a random holding tank for frags and fish that we're kind of keeping an eye on and figuring out where we want to place them, that sort of thing. So.
Oh, and she has an anemone tank, Miss Patty. I bet you're just thrilled.
Not quite the level of Patty's anemone tanks, but I'm getting there.
Which tank do you think is the most time consuming, that takes most of your time?
That's a good question. So I would say the 130 for the most part, just because it's the most mixed reef tank. I have a lot of trouble keeping nutrients up in that tank, so I'm constantly dosing and adding and testing. Just recently have really hit, fingers crossed, kind of a flow in this tank that it's not on autopilot by any means, but it's just kind of hit its groove. So that's been amazing. I would say overall, I think the cube with the anemones has been sort of the most work of finding the balance of what keeps the bubble tips happy and kind of moving fish in and out of there. But each tank is so different and comes with, you would think use all the same salt water, all the same, a lot of the same kind of system for the most part, but each tank is so unique and kind of comes with its own thing. So
absolutely. So real quick, let's do a quick rundown with each tank.
Absolutely. So the 130, it's pretty much just the stock WATERBOX setup with the sump. In the sump, I really only have a skimmer, and then there's also a carbon reactor in there. The lighting is a combination of the T5s and Kessel A160s actually. And I absolutely love that lighting combo of the T5s and then the LEDs. And it's worked really well. And I love the T5s kind of give the overall lighting to the whole tank, but then that Kessel shimmer is what I love a lot. So that's been really good. It's mostly LPS dominant. I love LPS corals. There are a few sticks in there that I'm kind of, the tester sticks that have been very slow coming that we're putting together. And it's really community fish tank. I have Tangs and Clownfish and a blue spotted Jawfish and Firefish. There's a bunch of fish in there, and luckily I've been fortunate where for the most part they all get along. Part of that is that they get fed twice a day plus nori, so almost 3 times a day. It keeps everybody fat and happy. So that's kind of the 130 in a very basic nutshell. Then in the anemone cube, I have a very small skimmer in the back, which actually a lot of it I just use for a fresh air line to keep pH up, because that's kind of in a room that doesn't get a lot of airflow some of the time. So I've noticed a huge difference in that tank for that reason. There's a Kessel 360X on that one. I'm a huge Kessel fan. And it's an all-in-one, very basic. I did pull out the sponge, and I've got some different media in the back chamber for that. Not a fan of the sponges. And then in the new build that I'm still kind of getting dialed in and going, it's very, very new in the WATERBOX Peninsula 25, because I'm just doing soft corals in that and some of the small venomous fish. I only have a Kessel A160 on there. And it's leathers and some gorgonians, both photosynthetic and non-photosynthetic, which I started dosing phyto from day one, and doing different things like that to really build up that environment. And it's done really well. I was able to put the gorgonians in there actually before I even put fish in, and they've been thriving, which has been great. In the venomous fish tank, right now I have a Madagascar coral croucher. They're all scorpion fish family. And then I have 2 pygmy red rooster wasp fish in there, which I call my chicken nuggets. They look like little roosters, and they're my babies. They're a blast. They're like little puppies, and they come running up in the tank for food. And it's a lot of fun. So hopefully I'll be adding a few more to that tank soon. And then the anemone cube, actually before this new build, my wasp fish and the coral croucher were in that tank with my 2 black and white oscillators clownfish and a royal Gramma. And despite being venomous fish, they were getting bullied and picked up by Mickey Mouse clownfish nonstop. Just food swiped from right out of their mouths and bullied and the whole thing. So that's why I started the new build for them. And then in the Evo, I have one little baby blue Tang. I mean, he's like just over an inch. And so I'm kind of grooming him and getting big to eventually go in the 130, waiting until he can hold his own with big tanks. And then there's 2 clownfish in there. One was a previous one from another build, and then one is actually one that I rescued from my mom's tank. I got her tank as a Christmas present set up, and he was having a tough time in her tank holding his own. So I ended up moving him up there, and he's thriving now, which is awesome.
How sweet. Do you name your fish? Totally off the topic, but
some of them I do. My brain, I don't know why it works. Some of them I name immediately and they have names, and other ones I'm like, that's baby blue Tang. Or that's, So there's no rhyme or reason to it. But sometimes they just have names, like my blue spotted Jawfish is Grumpy Gus, and he was just automatically Grumpy Gus. And then my wasp fish are Sweet and Sour because I called them chicken nuggets, and actually a fellow reefer named them Sweet and Sour for me. So it can be fun. Yeah.
That is so cool. None of them are actually like your channel or your brand's mascot. You love them all.
I love them all. Yes, absolutely. And they all get, I try and get adequate feature time for all of them.
Yep, you're good. You're very good at it. And so with all these different fish and different tanks, does your feeding, do you feed like all the tanks the same way, same times, or is there a difference?
A little bit different. I have Anthias in the 130 that require multiple feedings a day, and then the Tangs with the nori, they go, and my Foxface, they go through it like crazy. So what I've started doing is kind of mixing a plethora of frozen and refrigerated food in a big squirt bottle with some RODI, and that'll last me 2 or 3 days in the refrigerator, and I can just grab it, squirt it into this tank, twice, 3 times a day, and that's been great. I've started doing that for the other tanks too. One of the great things about moving the tiny venomous fish into their own tank is they have to be target fed. They're bottom dwellers and very slow eaters. And that was another reason for the new build is I have a long pipette and I target feed them, and that was just all getting sniped off immediately. So that one's definitely the most labor intensive for feeding. I do frozen food too, but I turn off all flow in the tank and really like drop it right in front of them. But it's sort of a labor of love. I love feeding that tank and seeing them come out. So it's fun. Yeah.
You said you have to turn off all the flow. Are the pumps like feed? Do you have feed control? Is that?
Right. So in the 130, we have, I actually have apexes on 3 of the 4 tanks, and do that. So, in this one, in the 130, I don't turn all flow off. I just slow down everything. I turn the gyres off, and then the return pump drops to a very low percentage. So all the food isn't blowing into the overflow box, and some of the slower fish have a better chance at it. So it still blows around, but it's not just getting swept out. And so that's an easy control. And then in where I target feed, I actually turn the return pump fully off, as well as the MP10. I just cut it off completely, and then we'll just drop food directly in front of the fish.
Gotcha. What's your dosing schedule for each tank, and how often do you test to make sure your dosing is on target?
If I feel like something's off, I'm testing almost every day, every other day. And then in a lot of tanks, I'll do maybe a weekly. If stuff's in a good flow, I'll do every few weeks, once a month, to kind of make sure I'm still hitting that baseline. This thing, I can't keep nutrients up in, like I said, so I'm right now dosing neonitro daily, and just keeping a really close eye on that. So I do neonitro, neophos to keep phosphates up. I've also been doing amino acids, and then I do, that's pretty much it on the daily, aside from the phyto. I do almost every night, especially in this tank, and then the peninsula that has the softies in it too. So.
Gotcha. With the apex, you don't have to, you're pretty reassured as it is. So is the smallest tank or the holding tank one that is not on the apex?
That's the one that's not on the apex. I'm a super high anxiety person. I wake up on my own at 2 a.m. going, oh God, did I do this to the tank? Did I do this? Did I put the feeding door back on? That thing. I really want sensors for feeding doors, by the way. It'll alert me if I left that thing off. But the apex really gives me a sense of calm. I actually just saw one of Patty's videos that was alerted her in the middle of the night that something was off, and it helps me sleep because my brain goes there anyway. And so it's been a huge relief to know that I'm hopefully going to get alerts if something's really awry. So
I've never kept apex either. I'm a simple seahorse check. And besides, all of
that's not simple, by the way, from what I've heard.
Right.
Yeah, no.
But all of my tanks have been set like completely separate systems, because like with seahorse, you don't want to mix them. And cross contamination is big bad. But so when you say you have 3 systems hooked up to the apex, my question is, are you able to hook up 3 different systems to the same apex, or is it 3 different apex?
So this is kind of outrageous, but it's 3 different ones.
Okay.
They are far enough apart and in 3 different rooms, and it's not cheap, but for my peace of mind, it's been well worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's actually a Trident on the 132 that we don't necessarily use for dosing, but just for testing as an ease and a reassurance that the numbers are where they're supposed to be. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice.
Did you have one, Patty?
I don't, but I'm right now actually starting to decide what I'm gonna get, because I'm gonna start traveling, especially during summer, between family vacations and just work. So I do want to get something that is going to, when I'm away, measure stuff and keep an eye on things. Just like, yeah, that was like today and 2 a.m. that happened. I went from controller to now like, okay, they really, definitely pays for it.
It is, and it's peace of mind. And something I actually have set on the Apex on the 130 is an alert is if the ATO runs for a certain amount of time too long, because that generally means one of my filter socks is clogged and I need to change it. But that's a good alert that you're not dumping a whole bunch of that RODI in there. So
I'm definitely bought over controllers because I thought, well, I'm normally home, especially with the whole, pandemic, and even when you're home, look what happened.
I was gonna say, everybody thinks they don't need it until they really do need it, and then it's too late, and that sucks. So,
right.
Yeah. Well, you guys have me convinced. So, do you quarantine fish, or?
Yes and no. There are some fish. I feel like certain wrasses and different things that I have that I know it's really stressful to move them around and have that. So if I'm getting from what I feel and hope is a reputable place, I won't do it. I've been very lucky and I've been okay. There are a couple of fish I've had that I've noticed if I'm questioning maybe their background and I want to keep an eye on them. I've never treated for anything. I've never done the medications, any of that. But even my Hawkfish that's in here, when I first got him, he was so shy and he would hide nonstop. And I target fed him for a long time to get him to kind of come out of his shell in the holding tank because I was too worried about him holding his own, just dumping him in here. So I feel like sometimes that smaller environment, I don't recommend, it being appropriate for a lot of fish. For long-term holding, I think just for observation is generally what I do, moreover than quarantining and then just making sure they're eating and that they get to kind of a certain confidence level, if you will, before I put them in with the big guys. So
yeah, and I consider that quarantining. I mean, some people do it for a long time, but there's a difference between observational and treating. So I'm totally
right.
Is there any fish that you've that you have not been able to keep? Like it's just not gone well?
Gosh, I'm trying to think. Some of the Anthias have been rough for me. Especially if they're smaller and not in the eating routine, the ones, and I've been very lucky with the ones I have now, which has been amazing. So that's kind of been an adventure. And then kind of the star of this tank for me has been my blue star leopard wrasse. And I love her so much. And I actually tried recently just a standard leopard wrasse and it didn't go well. Just never fully adjusted to the schedule and to eating, was super finicky. Again, I'm not sure, if it depends on just the fish or where they come from. And what's the other? Powder tanks, powder blues and powder browns. I've only tried twice, one powder brown and one powder blue. The powder brown I had for a couple of months. And then strangely introduced some cleanup crew and he ended up getting ick. And he was the one fish in the whole tank. I had multiple fish in there. They were all fine, just him, which was strange. And then I had a powder blue that unfortunately literally lasted like a day. And so those have been, they're known as being ick prone, which is a big concern. So, and it's just hard. And I've been pretty fortunate in most of the fish that I kept. I'm very selective about the fish that I get. I do a ton of research to make sure they're compatible and where they're coming from. And their eating habits and their tank size. Everything that goes into it, because I really believe in the community atmosphere. Or that being said, in like my venomous fish tank, that they're going to fit in there and be kind of that specialty. And they're all my water babies, so I'm always heartbroken when I lose them. But I think we've all been through it where we struggle with that one type or something just doesn't work for some reason. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. Absolutely. And I think it's really important. I said this on my little Wine Wednesday the other day. I think it's so important that we also share failures, because when we, you know, when we always share everything great, everybody, you know, somebody who's having difficulties thinks they're doing, that they're terrible, you know what I mean? And it's not true. We've all been there. So totally.
It's not an easy hobby, and that's part of what keeps it entertaining and fun and everything that goes into it. But I'm a true believer in sharing the failures too, because that's how you learn, and that's how, you know, other people can pick up on that, and myself too. I mean, I'm for Reefer, you know, 3.5 years, certainly not an expert, and it's an ongoing learning process. Not only are products and methods changing, but you have to figure out what works for you. And I think that's probably my biggest piece of advice to people is you do your research and you get your feedback, but you also have to follow your intuition and what works for your tank, and know that. And don't just take somebody's advice, you know, right off the bat and apply it to your tank. I always pick and choose and gather, and then just kind of follow what I feel like is going to work for my tanks. And I think that's really, really important to always do your own research and collect and gather information, but then stay true to what works for you, because every tank is different. And you think they might be the same, you know, in some regard, but everybody's different. So,
yep, and definitely don't jump to something just because somebody else is doing it. With the way social media is today, obviously, I want to know how it's affected your experience in a positive way, but I also want to know if you feel like it can be a negative, because there are so many people saying do it this way, do it that way.
That's a really good question. And when I first started on Instagram, I didn't know what I was doing. I feel like I still don't know what I'm doing half the time. But it was just a way to put my stuff out there and connect with people, I mean, all over the world that are in this hobby, and just that community feeling, and being able to chat and bounce ideas back and forth. And so that part has been amazing. And I'm fortunate enough to feel like a lot of the people that I looked up to and was like, oh my gosh, if I ever get to that level, now I'm kind of hanging with the big kids, which has been awesome. And to be able to share these experiences and get people excited about it is incredible. I also feel like what you said is people peruse. I mean, it's with any hobby, it's with beauty, it's with fashion, it's with whatever's out there. You see this stuff and you're like, oh gosh, am I ever, you know, going to be to that point, or am I doing something wrong, or any of this? And I think it's just, I don't want to say taking it with a grain of salt, literally and figuratively, but I think a lot of it's looking for inspiration, but then just doing you.
So Leah, is there anyone that has inspired you through this journey?
I mean, am I allowed to say the two of you, Patty and her dad? What I'm finding is amazing. When I first started into this, first of all, when I started in the saltwater tank reefing hobby, I had no idea how big it was. I had no clue that it was this massive and there were this many people out there doing it. I was also pleasantly surprised to see how many women reefers there were doing it. And I'm part of group chats for, you know, women reefers and this that you're doing. And so I think there's a lot of inspiration out there to take. I chat with some amazing women that have all different types of tanks and different experiences, and just bouncing ideas off each other. And I think that openness to feel like we can all ask each other questions and move forward is really amazing. So I've been, as I said, pleasantly surprised and really blessed to see how many supportive women reefers are out there.
So what was the biggest hurdles you have faced in this hobby?
Dinoflagellates, dinos, 100%. The 130, it was seriously a year-long battle, just about, with the kind of dinos that dwell in the sand. So they're really hard to get up into the water column, to even use a UV sterilizer on, to flush out, all of that. So it was about a year of constant dosing and testing and breaking not only nutrients up, but finding the right balance. And the sand was just copper and red and disgusting for a very, very long time. And you can't see it now, but it's white. I'm so happy, yes, that it's finally there. So I'm pretty proud of not giving up on that and making it work. it's hard for me because I can't necessarily say exactly what fixed it. I have some ideas I can give you, but I sort of threw the kitchen sink at it. Eventually it worked. Yeah.
So, well, and I know you've made clear you can't tell us what exactly worked, but what did you try? Like you said, dosing. What I know, I've heard so many things done. I personally had it in my reef, and I used peroxide and a skimmer, but I got really lucky. So I'm just curious what you did try.
And it was actually multiple rounds. In the first round, I did the 3-day blackout and the bubble scrubbing, some hydrogen peroxide dosing, and that worked for a while. And then it came back, and it seemed to come back with a vengeance. And I tried that again, and it didn't work. So it was not only keeping nitrate and phosphate up, fairly high. Phosphate's like 0.1, but also getting that good bacteria in there, constantly dosing the beneficial bacteria, and, Bactobalance, Microbacter 7, I mean, just the works. And then I feel like heavy feeding with fish food and Fido helped too. So I think it was really just keeping, overall, I would say probably keeping the beneficial bacteria, but then also the nutrients overall too.
Sure, that's the red field ratio or something like that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know the facts of it, but I remember.
Right.
What would you say makes you unique or your tanks unique from others?
Gosh, that's a good question. I'm very photography focused. So honestly, I think a lot of it is maybe just the photos that I put up that maybe attract people. As far as the fish, I think that my pygmy red rooster waspfish, my chicken nuggets, are probably what I'm most well known for out there in the IG world. I always get a lot of comments and questions on those guys. So that would probably be it. But I honestly don't feel like I'm that unique in a lot of this stuff. I just have a lot of tanks and post a lot of pictures.
Well, I think you're amazing, and you're doing an amazing job. So I disagree with that, but
yeah.
Is there any coral that you just have not been able to keep, or even too afraid to try, or anything like that?
I've avoided a lot of SPS. It still scares me. I think in the past I've struggled with acans and favias before. Fingers crossed. I feel like I'm over that hump. And I'm trying to think of, there hasn't been like any one in particular where it's just been like disaster over and over again. Thank goodness. Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Right.
What would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned from first tank to today?
Gosh. I think it kind of alludes back to what we talked about before, is finding your own rhythm and your own tank's rhythm. I think there's so many situations where you walk into the LFS or on Instagram or wherever, and somebody has possibly very sound advice for their situation. But for me, it's really, instead of jumping on that, coming home, analyzing it, kind of thinking about it, and then acting on maybe a modified version of that, or doing something different, and not being afraid to ask a lot of questions. I think when I first started in this hobby, I was like, I should know how to do this. You're worried about looking, silly or the newbie, and it's a complicated hobby. So I've gotten much more bold in saying, this isn't working. This corals diet, I can't do this. Like, somebody, help me and give me advice. And I think for the most part, this hobby is full of community-based people that really want to help and do that. And so not being afraid to ask, but then, like I said, really tailoring it to your needs and your tank needs.
Very good.
What would be one thing that, if you can pick one thing to share someone that is starting in social media, what would that be?
That wants to someday hang with the big cool chicks like you are now.
There you go.
Interaction is huge. You got to give love to get love. And I started out, you comment, you follow, I try and be really responsive to everybody on my Instagram of commenting and messaging. And that's, as I said, part of the love for me too, is I get to interact with people all over the globe with this shared passion. But I think that's a big part of it, is really putting yourself out there. And then you'll hopefully see that in return.
Do you have a schedule? Like when you, on your posts, do you schedule posts like have to have 3 a day, or do you just go with the flow, or what's your system?
I 100% go with the flow. I'm pretty busy, on a daily basis. I have my own company that I run, and life and dogs and all that. So I'm certainly not taking tank shots every day. A lot of times, Saturday evening, I will snap 200 photos. And then I download the 3 that are good out of the 200. And sometimes I'll go in and I'll edit those and save them as drafts. But a lot of times it's, most of the time it's just what I'm in the mood for that day. There are fun things like Tank Tuesday or Worm Wednesday, or, different things like that, that I'll kind of kitschy things I'll put up, but it's very much random for me.
So what is next for you? Like what, or if you don't have any immediate plans, because I know you're still working on the build you're working on, then what is the one thing you hope to accomplish before you, I don't want to say die, but like what, let me rephrase that. What's the one thing you hope to accomplish in reefing that you haven't accomplished yet? Or what's the next build you plan? That kind of thing.
That's a really good question. So right now in the other room, I have both the Cube 20 and the Peninsula 25. And the idea is to move the Cube 20 anemone tank upstairs into my office. And so that'll be a undertaking to finally get it up there. And then currently I'm in the hunt for more tiny venomous fish, which are surprisingly hard to source. So I want to fill that tank out some more too. So those are kind of my 2 immediate goals. I of course always have the fantasies of going bigger and better. Like we always want to upgrade, but that's probably not in the near future. I feel like the house is pretty much full.
Once you have tanks in every room, it's like, even a supportive partner is like, come on now. Come on.
Right, exactly. Yeah. No, that was the last one. I was like, I'm sorry, you want to do what? Another tank in here? And I was like, it's happening. And then the next day it was like set up, and I was like, oops, sorry.
Yeah. So Leah, you told us about the mini poisonous fish and that you're having problems sourcing it. Would you like to share where you're located? So if someone here on the audience would like to help you out, please go ahead.
That would be amazing. Yes. And I'm located in Sonoma County, California, which is about an hour outside of San Francisco. And I am on the hunt for tiny venomous fish that usually fit into the scorpionfish family, but on the smaller side that kind of max out at a couple of inches each.
If you're seeing this and you have a source, please share it. Reach out to Leah on Instagram or comment on this video.
Yeah.
The only other thing I have is just to thank you so much for joining us. This has been awesome learning more about you. And we're so thankful that you were willing to share with Women in Reefing.
Well, I'm, as I said, honored and thrilled to be here. And Patty, thank you so much for the invite and getting me to step up to do this. So I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Stay up to date with all of Leah's awesome tanks by following her, Callie Coral Collector, on Instagram. And we'll see you on the next Women in Reefing featured video.
Make sure you're subscribed to all of the Women in Reefing channels so that you never miss a feature video or any other cool plans we're going to be rolling out pretty soon.